like I say, the war with Japan or China, what actually kicked it off was basically what happened was as you know, as I said, the White Star submarines that were anchored at Pearl Harbor were civilian submarines, basically civilian rental classic rental submarines. Basically, the submarines were 120 years old. Like I said, Nixon and Jimmy Carter and John McCain and all of those boys had no idea about anything that was going on in the military. Although they could have asked, but they didn't really know. They didn't know the structure of the government. They didn't know the structure of anything, and they didn't really know who was who. Anyway, what happened was basically they pulled up to this island one time, and they were negotiating or getting basically some heroin or something like that, or some drugs or something like that, some cocaine or something. I forget exactly what they were doing, but basically they had this guy basically that was dressed up in a fake dress uniform basically. All my uniforms, they used real gold and real silver and real metal, basically. Solid metal. Everything was real. Like 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 if you look at one of the old uniforms and you took one of the stars and you took a knife and chinked it, you would see metal underneath, gold metal underneath. It was all real metal. Just like the bars on the German uniforms that were two bars. They were real silver bars, real metal. And like I said, you could submit, and if you went to a base and a high-ranking officer said, "Let me see your bars," they would unpin them with pride and give it to him, and the officer could take a knife and go and see if it was real silver underneath. And that meant you're a real officer, and they'd put it back on. Real metal. Everything was real. Now, Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon, I guess they didn't have the money to afford real metal, or they didn't know that all of the metals, on all my officers were real metal. Those gold stars on the uniforms were real gold stars. 8% or 24 karat solid gold stars, basically. Everything was real. What Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon, or somebody, the congressmen were using was not real gold. It was plated. Anyway, though, one time what happened was they pulled up to this island with the White Star submarines and basically went up this river or something like that and went to this dock and got on this dock and they were negotiating or something like that. And there's this old man that was working on an old generator or something like that. It had broken down. And there's this old man that was working on a generator. Old Japanese guy, Chinese guy, and he was beating on it and stuff like that and getting it to run or fixing it basically. It's an older is an older unit and basically was finicky and needed a certain touch. And like I said, many of the Japanese officers knew the workings of everything. They were very, 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 very intelligent. Went to school for a very long time to understand how to fix and how to work on and how to do everything. Anyway, but he was in these dirty rags, basically. This what's called this overalls, whatever, coveralls, basically, and was working on it. It was all greasy and stuff. And anyway, they get out of the White Star submarine. They walk up to him, and there's this guy he has his stars, whatever. It looks like a real general, and he starts talking, and they start negotiating, or they talk to somebody around there. I think they're talking to the first lieutenant or something like that on the place, and they're negotiating the drug transaction, and this old man's behind them, basically working on the thing. Anyway, though, and this other guy is like, there's some problem or something like that, and the other guy's like, "Do you know who I am? Blah blah blah. I'm a 4-star, blah blah blah, or whatever general." And he's like, "I outrank you, blah blah blah," and I forget, the Japanese guy said something or something like that, basically, and eventually it comes to they pull a gun. And I think they actually end up shooting shooting this one guy or whatever. I think there was the Japanese guy that walks up and basically and says, "I'll handle this," blah blah or something like that. Anyway, though, he ends up getting shot, or they pulled a gun on him. And like I said, the report is basically everybody on the work site turns and looks at basically the White Star submarine and those guys. And what they didn't realize was they had just shot like a 5-star general, or basically one of the high ranking officers of the Japanese Empire, or Chinese Empire, basically. He was a super high-ranking official, and had over 40 years of military service underneath his belt, and was basically regarded as a hero in the Japanese or Chinese Empire, or Japanese and Chinese homeland, or whatever. And he was just working on a generator, and he didn't want to get his nice uniform all dirty. and they shot him. Anyway, I believe he lives or whatever else like that. But basically, he saw through their lie or something like that, and they shot him basically, and that's what started the war. They were trying to get drugs or something, or they didn't have any money, and they were trying to get drugs or something like that or something. And basically, they didn't realize that he was a 5-star or 4-star general of the Chinese Empire, and because he was wearing coveralls and he was working on a generator, and they were like, you know, they like I said, in China or Japan, you know, he who knows how to do something does it. So he was working. He knew about the generator. He knew how to fix it, or the machinery. So he was fixing it, and basically just doing, working on it. And he was just not wearing his uniform. And they didn't. They thought he was. They were trying to bluff. Anyway, so they pulled a gun on him, and I believe they actually ended up shooting him or something like that, expecting that like they would command the troops from then on. I think what they expected is they would just shoot him and be like, "See, I rank him. I'm the highest ranking," or so. I don't know what they were doing exactly. Like I said, you'll have to talk to China and or Japan and ask them about how it actually went down. But it involved my White Star submarine, and basically involved some people. I think he might have known that the White Star submarines were civilian submarines and not military. Like I said, many people, those submarines were 150 years old. They were stupid for going around trying to pretend like they were military submarines or military whatever. So anyway, many people from Germany to China to Japan, everyone knew about my White Star submarines. They were old submarines that had just been refurbished. And I had even paid for the paint. So they were trying to bluff and they were trying to con people. And they came up against someone that actually knew about them. Everyone knew about them, though. They were even in the paper one time. Anyway, like I said, they were really incredibly stupid. So anyway, so they ended up shooting someone. And basically, like I say, the reports I have is that every single Chinese or Japanese person working